Okay, I think we're ready to begin. One of our panelists isn't here yet. Hopefully she will arrive, but we'll continue without her. Welcome. I'm Tom Fitton. I'm president of Judicial Watch, and welcome to our panel entitled ACORN Scandals, What Next? Judicial Watch is a conservative, nonpartisan educational foundation dedicated to promoting transparency, accountability, and integrity in government politics and the law. Through its educational endeavors, Judicial Watch advocates high standards of ethics and morality in our nation's public life and seeks to ensure that political and judicial officials obey the law and do not abuse the powers entrusted to them by the American people. Thanks largely to the presidency of Barack Obama, the group known as ACORN, the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, has become perhaps the most notorious public advocacy organization in the country. Conservatives have been critical of the community organization for some time, but the criticism of ACORN went viral, so to speak, with the release of undercover videos by conservative journalists depicting ACORN employees and volunteers providing advice on how to evade tax, immigration, housing, and even child prostitution laws. Judicial Watch has been investigating ACORN in earnest for about 2 years now. And as of now, we have over 24 Freedom of Information Act open records requests pending with federal agencies. And we have at least 2 Freedom of Information Act lawsuits active concerning ACORN matters. The first lawsuit, filed against the Department of Labor's Employee Benefits Security Administration, involves information about monies embezzled from ACORN by Dale Rathke, the brother of the organization's founder, Wade Rathke. The New York Times reported that overall, Dale Rathke embezzled $948,000 in 1999 and 2000. And according to a report by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, at least minority staff, I think, $215,000 of these funds came in the form of a loan. And apparently the manner in which this loan was handled and concealed by ACORN internally may have violated the Employee Income Retirement Security Act, ERISA, which is the arguably the most important law governing employee benefits in the private sector in this country. But of course, the Obama Labor Department hasn't been terribly helpful as of yet in terms of producing documents about this scandal, hence our lawsuit. And our second lawsuit is against the Corporation for National Community Service, which is the organization that is behind the AmeriCorps program and oversees it. And it handles programs and paperwork for national government grants, of course, obviously, including the AmeriCorps program as well. And Judicial Watch had already uncovered through the Freedom of Information Act documents indicating that ACORN's sister organization, ACORN Housing, was no longer eligible for federal funds due to previous abuses involving an AmeriCorps grant. And this leads to an important point that we were able to uncover. Tegan Millspaugh, who's on our investigation staff, was able to obtain information from the Labor Department and the AmeriCorps parent agency about investigations these agencies conducted into ACORN. As best as we can tell, these were the only 2 comprehensive federal investigations into ACORN's practices. And Tegan's preparing a special report on what we found, but here's a preview. The federal government found that ACORN was found to have discriminated against, harassed, and fired employees who were involved in protected union activity because ACORN was afraid other unions would try to destroy the organization. ACORN Housing was required to return more than $16,000 of funds to the Corporation for National Community Service after it was discovered that the organization was misusing the money in order to directly profit ACORN. ACORN's working conditions were so bad that in one office, over 90% of employees quit in less than 6 months. Most quit within a few days or weeks of being hired. Those who remained were required to work 54 hours a week on a $16,000 annual salary. AmeriCorps members at ACORN, AmeriCorps of course funded with your tax dollars, members at ACORN Housing were told to recruit new ACORN members, a direct violation of federal grant provisions. ACORN threatened to stage protests against banks that refused to give money to ACORN and ACORN Housing for their low-income housing programs. It's some others may term that extortion. According to several former employees, money paid to ACORN Housing for credit checks, loan counseling, was immediately turned over to Citizens Consulting, Inc., another ACORN group responsible for reallocating funds and essentially running the whole ACORN empire behind the scenes. Although it claims it is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping low-income families, ACORN routinely charged clients over $150 for credit checks and loan counseling. And in conclusion, numerous witnesses who worked at ACORN Housing and ACORN offices concluded that ACORN needed to be investigated for misconduct. Now, what is incredible is that these lowlights were uncovered back in 1995 and 2001. Yet they all sound like problems that could have been uncovered yesterday, as I'm sure our panelists here will attest to. Despite its long and controversial history, the Obama administration has had no problem violating its own procedures and inviting ACORN to partner with the U.S. Census Bureau. In its official statement responding to the ACORN controversy when it first popped up in the beginning of the year, the Obama Commerce Department downplayed ACORN's participation in the U.S. Census and labeled baseless the notion that ACORN would be involved in any census count. But our investigation uncovered documents that cast doubt on that assurance. We found through a FOIA lawsuit that the Census Bureau offered ACORN the opportunity to, quote, recruit census workers who would participate in the account. Essentially, ACORN would be is charged in this partnership with sending and recruiting workers that would be sent over the census, and then census would make the decision to hire them. Moreover, as an executive-level partner, ACORN had the ability to organize and serve as a member on a complete count committee, which, according to census documents, helps develop and implement locally based outreach and recruitment campaigns. Our expose of this relationship put a lot of pressure on the Census Bureau, and they severed, finally, the ACORN ties. The Census Director, in an understated letter to ACORN, cutting the ties, the Census Director, Robert Groves, wrote, "It is clear that ACORN's affiliation with the 2010 census promotion has caused sufficient public concern in the general public and may even become a discouragement to public cooperation, negatively impacting 2010 census efforts." Now, that's victory for government accountability achieved. And of course, the undercover videos played no small role in this census decision to cut ACORN off, which came days after the videos were released. You know, the ACORN undercover videos were perhaps the most important media story of 2009. The trio behind the videos, James O'Keefe, Hannah Giles, and Andrew Breitbart, embarrassed the major media and forced Congress and the President to take steps to cut off ACORN funding. But as we note in our upcoming report, ACORN is currently working to reinstate government funding and has had a disconcerting amount of success in doing so. ACORN just won a preliminary injunction from a federal court that could reinstate the federal funding. In addition, ACORN conducted its own internal investigation, which claimed that ACORN had not committed any illegal activity. However, ACORN's investigation, which one critic said is not worth the paper it's written on, does not address the numerous accusations of misconduct and illegal activity, and is not an acceptable substitute for a comprehensive investigation of ACORN. Now, of course, this report that ACORN issued exonerating itself for any misconduct was well covered by the media. In fact, the internal ACORN report, though, specifically and conveniently avoided investigating the allegations of massive voter registration fraud, which is for sure the most legally significant scandal facing the ACORN organization. So given these recent turn of events, our What Next for ACORN panel, I think, is timely. And joining me here today are three experts in ACORN matters, including one critic, who just arrived, we're glad to have you, who would like nothing more than to rescue ACORN from its scandalous ways. Matt Vadum is a senior editor, sitting here on my right, is a senior editor with the Capital Research Center. A veteran journalist, Matthew edits the Center's Organization Trends and Foundation Watch. During his 7 years in the Washington Bureau of the Bond Buyer, a daily financial newspaper based on Wall Street, he covered Congress, the Supreme Court, housing, state and local finance. And while a reporter for the Central Penn Business Journal in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, he won an award for an outstanding legal journalism from the Pennsylvania Bar Association for an article that focused on employment law.